Well, the big breaking news story coming in, the Ministry of Information Technology invoking its powers under Section 69A of the IT Act has made a very major decision today. It says in view of the emergent nature of threats, they've decided to block 59 apps since in view of information available, they are engaged in activities which are prejudicial and to the sovereignty and integrity of India, the defense of India, and security of state and public order. This includes the very high-profile app TikTok by ByteDance and several others. We'll bring you that entire list in a little while from now. Over the last few years, India has emerged, the government says, as a leading innovator when it comes to tech advancements and a primary market in the digital space. At the same time, there have been raging concerns on aspects relating to data security and safeguarding the privacy of 130 crore Indians. Let's go across to NDTV's Akhilesh Sharma, who joins us. Akhilesh, is this directly linked to the tension against China in Ladakh?
Absolutely, Vishnu. The sources are telling us that this decision is a clear-cut message to the Chinese government and also the Chinese agencies which have been using, they have been accused of using all these Chinese mobile applications. They were being used as a spyware and malware, and the public safety and security were jeopardized because of this. And there are tremendous reports with the government that how the privacy of the Indian citizens were being violated by these Chinese apps. And there are close links between the technology companies of the Chinese origin and also the military of China. So all these evidences were before the government. The sources are very clear that the Modi government has taken this firm decision, and this is a clear-cut message to China that how that India's sovereignty and the integrity of the country cannot be compromised with, and also how it is going to hurt the Chinese investment elsewhere also, because remember, these companies, they have huge investment in India. Millions and millions Indian users use these platforms for several years. They are making lots of money from India. And after this move by the government of India, of course, the shares and the valuation of all these Chinese companies is going to go down. And we have similar reports coming from other countries also. They have similar complaints against these Chinese mobile applications and Chinese tech companies. So they are now expected to follow India's example. So this is a clear-cut message to China, and this comes ahead of tomorrow's crucial talks between the top military leaders. And now we have seen that this government has taken a major decision as far as the Chinese technology companies are concerned. And Vishnu, remember, there was a huge demand within India that the government should act against these companies which have been, compromising with the privacy settings and the users' safety of Indian users who have been using it in a large number, Vishnu.
All right, Akhilesh, we'll keep coming back to you in a little while from now. Is this some sort of a knee-jerk reaction is what lakhs of people across this country will be wanting to see and wanting to learn more about? A lot of these apps are some of the most common apps which exist in India. TikTok, Share It, then Baidu Maps used not by that many, but the Hello app. WeChat is also been banned completely. That was very much the Chinese WhatsApp in use in this country. WeSync is gone, Mailmaster is gone, Weibo is gone, Zender is gone, and so a lot of these very common apps, I've named just a few of them, are illegal now because it comes in the way of national security and this decision to ensure safety and sovereignty of India. They believe that it's been compromised and these apps need to go. So it's a huge step. What happens next? Will this end up in courts? We're waiting for all sorts of reactions on this as well. But let's for the moment focus on what's been very much our big story through the day. There is now clarity on the extent of the Chinese army incursion in the Galwan region of Ladakh. NDTV has accessed historic documents on what the Chinese claim to be their claim line in the area in 1960. Now satellite images indicate that they've gone 433 meters ahead of that right into Indian territory. India has been matching the Chinese build-up across Ladakh, and that build-up is significant. Now, NDTV has chosen not to publish any satellite images of frontline Indian positions in Ladakh, nor spell out the extent of India's substantial force build-up. So what is the extent of the Chinese intrusion in Galwan, since the line of actual control between India and China has not been defined? Now there is clarity on just that. Look at this image carefully. The extent of the Chinese incursion in our territory in the Galwan Valley is absolutely clear, 423 meters. What we will explain to you is how that's been calculated. Well, on the broad left, on your left is the Shok River. The river in blue is the Galwan River. The red line is the line of actual control. China controls areas to the right. India controls areas to the left. In the center, the red dot indicates the site of the clashes between India and China on the 15th of June, in which 20 Indian soldiers were killed in action. India believes 45 Chinese soldiers were killed here that night. Now, this was the site of those clashes. These satellite images of the 25th of June show that the Chinese have built up the area since the clashes of the 15th of June. So there are Chinese posts very clearly visible on Indian territory. But what you see here is a published book called The Report of the Officials of the Governments of India and the People's Republic of China on the Boundary Question. This 1960-1961 document spells out the Chinese claims in this area, including Galwan. China back then told the Indian delegation, and I quote, "After the alignment passed over the two peaks, it went south along the mountain ridge where it crossed the Galwan River, and it spells out the longitude and the latitude." Now, we decided to do a simple search of these coordinates on Google Earth Pro, and this indicates to us the precise line of this, the precise location of this line in the Galwan Valley. And therefore, what are the conclusions that we can make on the basis of now getting an accurate fix of the line of actual control in Galwan? Well, the areas to the immediate north of those coordinates would be Indian territory, and they quite clearly are. But as the satellite pictures indicate, there's a big incursion. The measurement tool on Google Earth Pro indicates that China is an occupation of 423 meters of Indian territory along the Galwan River bank to the north of its own claim line of 1960. Let's stay on this for a moment. That is the exact extent, 423 meters of the Chinese intrusion in the Galwan Valley. General Satish Dua joins us now for his views on this. Thank you, sir, very much for joining us. It's unbelievable, sir, isn't it? The Chinese choosing to, to break their own claim line, something which they had themselves answered in a question raised by our diplomats way back in 1960, to edge forward and to inch forward and to build up this 430 odd meters in our territory. What does this indicate?
Vishnu, you're right. Like we've been talking about this over the last 1 month or so, Galwan does not form part of those 23 areas that have been identified as ADPs, areas of differing perceptions. So we are seeing, as you just now brought out yourself, that we are seeing their own, by their own admission, a certain claim line or a version of LAC, as we may call it, from their side. And now, as per what images you have put out, I am only going by that statement and things that one has been seeing in the media, that you said that their camp is across the line of actual control. I just want to clarify one technical aspect, if I may. Vishnu, what happens is that you read out the long latitude, longitude, which is correct. That's how the lines were drawn earlier. But please remember that the armies, whether it is the Indian Army, Chinese Army, Pakistani Army, when we have the LOC, we all operate on military maps. When I was commissioned, we had inch maps. And there were quarter-inch maps at the smaller scale. Then somewhere in the 80s, the maps changed to meter maps, and then we had to convert these lines from an inch map to a meter map. What I'm trying to get at, without getting into technicalities, is that the line that you see on a long lat, when it is translated to a map, both the countries do it by their own, on their own. And when I have gone for a flag meeting several years ago, more than 2 decades ago, and then we were sort of arguing about these lines. I'll end this point here to say that discrepancies do creep up, but the fact remains that also at this time we've had this bloody incident where we've lost life, both sides have lost lives. That is why first ever Lieutenant General level talks, already 2 rounds have taken place. Tomorrow, as you brought out, tomorrow is the 3rd one. But the larger point is both sides have now agreed to disengage and go back. And that's why these talks are going to be painstaking in terms of setting out the protocols and then in terms of monitoring how the disengagement is taking place step by step.
General, one final question to you. What you were mentioning to me is fascinating, that if you translate lat long into other maps, military grade maps, then our interpretation of military grade maps based on lat long, which may have been provided earlier on, and the Chinese definition using their maps would be different. Could you give us a few more details of, in your experience, why this would be the case? I mean, why would it be different?
Look, I remember going for a flag meeting nearly 25 years ago in Kargil. When we carried the map, we were talking of the ceasefire line or the LC that was in 1972. Now, 1972, the LC had been signed by both sides, the LOC as we call it in the civilian parlance. When we, in 80s, my generation officers have served when we used to work on inch maps. When the meter maps came in 80s and we used to translate, we used to sort of transpose the lines, some inaccuracies creep in, maybe because of a user's fault. If you place 3 people in Survey of India also in 3 different rooms and tell them to transpose the lines, there will be some differences between the two. And sometimes these differences on a map actually do translate to a couple of 100 meters this side or that side. I am a retired officer. Yeah. I don't hold the brief for the government. I was only trying to explain. I'm only trying to explain that today, when you have these enablers of Google, Google Earth Pro, what has been banned is the Chinese system, all these systems, when you come to that exactitude of a line, may really not be very exact, especially when you transpose from one system to another. So difference of perception may exist there, while that may be a different issue.
I agree with you completely, General. My only submission over here is that we aren't now following that Google Earth Pro line of actual control, because if we did, then it actually shows lesser territory occupied by the Chinese. This lat long actually indicates it's about 250 meters more of territory, not square meters, meters down that river, the river basin itself, the river valley, that the Chinese appear to have occupied more territory. And we've measured it using Google Maps, using a ruler. And that's a simple tool. That's not a complicated tool. It appears to show this very significant, I mean, every inch of our territory is significant. I mean, it goes without saying.
Just one sentence there, Vishnu. See, yesterday your article put out 130 meters, and now today we have a different version of 420.
Yeah, we've got this now. We've got this now based on the 1960 document. 130 meters, 140 meters was approximately what Google Earth Pro showed. What we now have is the actual claim line made by the Chinese, not by us, by the Chinese, which they themselves have overstepped. And it just so happens that Galwan itself has been spelt out by them, not by us. And it just goes to show the extent of what they're trying to do, inch into our territory. I think that's an argument we both would tend to agree on.
Interestingly, Vishnu, Galwan does not even have a name in Chinese language.
No, it doesn't.
Most places, they have a different. So Galwan, they even use our name, and which is named after, we read the story in the media several.
General, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.